Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. A great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately picking up where last week's episode left off, I thought, Barry's going to have to run back in time to kind of reverse this, what happened to Iris, Alexa, and Bashir, but it's like, no, I can't really do that no matter what the circumstances, because it can cause more irreparable damage to the timeline. But luckily, it turns out he doesn't have to, because apparently Bashir accidentally created illusions, which is like, whoa, you did that? I didn't even know that you could do that. And it's like, oh yeah, and then Alexa figures it out. It's like, no, even he didn't know he could do that. He was just trying to save himself, but he's like, whoa, you should be recognizing the fact is of how dope I am, how baller it is. I just saved us from getting murdered. But it's like, yeah, his instinct just to protect himself ended up activating his another ability within himself. So I thought that was so fascinating. I mean, to be fair, it seems like we're getting more, like with him, we got more and more of like advancement on his powers. But it's like, okay, so now that happened, it's like, it's not going to be long before Nora figures out they're still alive. So what do? Like, they're going to have to protect them. But Barry's like, he knows just a place to put them to kind of hide them from Nora, because Nora is going to be able to track them. And so Iris goes with it because Iris is saying, like, but Barry's like, I don't get it. Why would Nora kill you? And it's like, competition. Because she's like them, it's like, for her, it's a situation of like, they need to go, but also Iris needs to go, because essentially she's taking all of Barry's tension away. Because always, I mean, once again, like I think even more so recently, but the Speed Force had always looked at Barry a certain way. Like, Barry was always super important. Like, that's the one, he's the one she spent so much time always talking to and like getting to know on a level. You know, once again, it seems like her favorite form is to walk around looking like his mom. Whether she was necessarily stuck in that form, but also just how she was like earlier in the season with him, just like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, like, I want to be, you know, I'm your lightning, you know? So it's like, Nora's always felt that, and I think with all these other forces around it, it's like, oh, you wanted to protect them. It's like, no, you should be on my side. Don't go against me, Barry. We're supposed to be a team. And it's like him and Iris is just kind of like a spit in the face to her a little bit, because it's like, once again, it's like, you might be his lightning rod, but I'm his lightning, you know? So it's interesting, you know? I mean, I think that almost fits poetically, considering like, oh yeah, like, you're the lightning rod and I'm the lightning, so I'm kind of drawn to you, so I kind of want to take you out to a certain extent. Like, on some level, you can almost like draw like parallels between like them being the lightning and lightning rod respectively, and what that kind of means, especially, you know, when we compared, like, you know, what Barry mean, you know, what that means for Barry, and him smack dab middle of that. I just thought I think it's just kind of fascinating when you actually think about it. But it turns out the one spot Nora couldn't find them would be where the Speed Force died. So Barry, it's like, well, yeah, we can get back there, because it is technically a point in time. So they go back there. It's obviously the house they grew up in, but it's like obviously like run down and everything. So obviously, because I thought it was interesting when Barry disappeared, I was like, that didn't look like his lightning, that looked like the Speed Forces, but that's because she drew him back. So obviously they're going to have to like lay low there and everything, but the Speed Force drew him back to be like, the fact is, like, you're trying to protect them, but for her, it's like, you don't know what death is like, kind of like the loneliness and basically how suffocating it is, and how like that loneliness can basically burn away your soul. And for her, it's like, it's because Iris and Barry kind of started this when they gave birth to the forces and everything. It's like, we brought you back. It's like, yeah, but you also brought those forces into play, and they've been basically suffocating myself and suffocating me, and I don't want to die again. So it's basically kill or be killed. So I'm going to kill them before they can snuff me out, because I'm not about to die again. I'm not going to be trapped in that loneliness. So she's giving Barry a limited, it's like, basically, bring me the forces or your city dies, because she's bringing essentially a cosmic storm down at the very least. And obviously Cecile gets hit by lightning, especially at a time where Joe's kind of up in a tailspin. And I think that's so interesting, because we rarely get to see Joe like this, because Joe's always been like the helping hand, the guiding hand for everyone around, especially for Barry and Iris. But like for him to be kind of tail spinning a little bit, it's just because so much is happening. Like he left his badge behind, like his job, like he's been a cop for so long. Like, you know, for him, it's like with everything that's going on, there was a prison break because lightning like struck the wall of the prison and a whole bunch of metas escaped. But it's like because I gave up my badge, there's nothing I can do. Now Cecile's unconscious because of the lightning that struck her. At first I was thinking like, oh, that was kind of on purpose, but it seems like no, it just seemed random at the very least. So Joe's kind of spiraling at that point. Barry's trying to track down Dion because it's like if he can get Dion, he's going to try and get Dion to a safer location to protect him from Nora, which he finally catches up with Dion and it's like, I was trying to kill you, I wasn't trying to kill my siblings, but it's like, it's okay, they're alive, and it's like, it was an illusion. He's like, it was psych, wasn't it? It's like, yeah. But he's just like, I just wanted you to feel the pain of what I felt when you called me a mistake. And he's like, you're right, I shouldn't have called you a mistake, Dion. Like, I realize now, like, you're meant to be, you know? And it's like, because for Dion, he's tail spinning too, because for him, it's like, he had these dreams about becoming a football god, and that life didn't work out that way. But now that he actually is a god, life's still not turning out the way he thought it'd be, so... But for him, it's like, okay, let's join together and kill Nora. But Barry's like, no, because he's not about killing someone, like, especially Nora, especially, like, because he realizes, like, yeah, she's made her mistake, but she's confused and she's not thinking straight that killing her isn't the way. Like, there has to be another way. But Dion's like, well, if you're not going to help me, I'm going to do it on my own. Because Barry almost turned, he definitely went full father in that moment, being like, I said no. Even Joe being like, maybe you should, and it's like, wait, even Barry like, wait, what? It's like, if it means saving lives, then killing Nora. I mean, he's like, these are gods. It's like, we're not but like ants to them anyway, so is it really that crazy to kill one to save so many lives? But it's also like, that's showing you definitely, Joe, it's like, you're usually the voice of reason for you to be, but Barry's like, no, like, I'm not going to do that. That goes against what he believes in, especially because he believes, like, no, there is another way, there has to be another way. So he's going to continue looking for Dion. And it actually, interestingly enough, was Allegra that actually spoke up to him, because it's like, you know, you're the man that sat on a bomb to save Cecile, that you gave a delinquent like me a chance, a new lease on life, and gave me an opportunity to kind of actually become the reporter I've become now. So it's like, just because you don't have a badge, you're still the same person that can help people. Your badge isn't why you help people. It's a core part of who you are, of helping people, you know, just kind of follow that. So it's like, you can help me. And he's like, I got to stay here with Cecile. Like, you know, this is where, and she's like, if that's what you want to do. But it's like, they're trying to gather and get as many people out of town while they can. Obviously, Bashir kind of talks to Alexa, which I really appreciate Alexa being like, oh, so what was Barry like when he was younger? It's like, oh, yeah, like, you know, small for his age. But then he had a growth spur. It's like, oh, that must have been nice for him. It's like, not really. I think it was around age 13 or something, she was saying, because Barry was, you know, clumsy, as we saw. You know, it's been a while since we've seen it. I mean, Barry still has his clumsy days, but not as much since getting his speed. But it's mainly like, we definitely saw that at the beginning of him being always late, being so clumsy. But I'm surprised they never really went into it. I wonder, do the other forces, do they know about Barry's circumstances? Well, I don't know. I was wondering if it was going to go in that conversation, but I love Bashir being like, oh yeah, mom and the kids talking about the old times and stuff like that. But Bashir was saying, telling Alexa, like, no, we need to, steal that device from Iris and leave, because we can't stay here. Like, if Nora's going to track us down eventually, we need to take the fight to her. So in that moment, eventually they want the device, and obviously, Alexa kind of starts using her power, which is kind of messed up, stepping and choking your mom like that. It's like, all she's trying to do is protect you, but it's like, you're kind of forcing her hand, and Iris breaks, and it's like, I'm sorry, I had to do that, but turns out it was an illusion. But Cher's getting really good at that, so they all kind of end up, they kind of break the device, they activate the device, and all of them get sucked out of there and returned to Central City. No matter what Barry does, he can't find Dion. Chester and Cisco have been working on the device. It's a means of dealing with trying to capture Nora, but it's like, how do you capture a god, But then, he confronts Nora, which, it's interesting because Nora does the whole black eye thing, and at first I was like, oh, could that be like a byproduct of the Ramsey thing or something? But it's like, no, because she was resurrected, so that wouldn't have anything to do with that. But also, I forgot, it's like, well, you have, Eobard with the red eyes, and you also had, Solomon, Hunter Solomon with the, Zoom with the black eyes, so it's like, I'm assuming it's kind of the same vein. I guess it's just because she's giving into her anger, and it's like, it's just because, like, you don't see others, like, Nora, like, never did that. Like, her eyes never shifted like that. None of, like, the good guys do, but I guess it's like, once the darkness seeps into you, it manifests like that. Like it does for Eobard, like it did for Hunter, like it did for her in this moment. So I just thought that was kind of fascinating. But for her, she kind of brings up that basic, well, her and Barry and Dion have a confrontation because Barry's just trying not to, he doesn't want things to play out this way, but she explains to him, it's like, I'm not the one doing all this. You think it is? It's actually your kids doing this. Like, the other three forces, they never really went into necessarily explaining why that was. I think it's just because it's like these forces of nature are manifesting in this world and they're kind of running wild. Not just the individual humans, but on a cosmic level, that energy. And it seems like they're basically implying, like, and it's so interesting, because I was wondering, like, an episode or two back, like, when they were running into Bashir, like, oh yeah, there's an old school car out front near Barry's old house. I was like, why is that? I was like, they made such a point of it. It's like, it's because it's supposed to subtly be pointing out the fact is that this has all been happening the entire time. Like, with Abracadabra, like, oh, that first earthquake, it wasn't just like Fuerza doing that. It was like, well, it was a byproduct of Fuerza as the strength force. So it's been slowly over the course of the season showing like it's having a wider and wider effect. It's just little stuff here and there until it eventually grew into what is this storm. So Nora's like, none of this is me. That's why we have to kill them, because in her mind it's like, this is the only way to properly bring balance, because everything's off kilter, because you only intended to bring me back, but you ended up birthing them, and like those forces all manifesting in physical forms now. It's just too much on a cosmic level to be all happening at once. So Dion tries to step in, but he wasn't enough to defeat Nora. So Barry gets him, back to Star Labs to be taken care of. But it's like, well, what do we do now? The storm's running rampant, and that's the thing for Barry. It's like, I don't know what to do. Like, am I supposed to just let Nora kill them and save those lives? But if I don't, like, yeah, they'll be alive, but I'll be killing like this entire city. So for Barry, it's like, I don't know what's the right thing to do, because the right thing to do would be to save everyone, but it's like, it seems like he's in a position where he can't. So it's a situation of, I have to choose, Iris there with him, like no one has like an option of what to do. It's like, but then, Joe kind of snapping to his senses, was able to kind of talk to them about, like, think about everything that you were able to do. Like, the fact of the matter is that you don't ever have to have and handle anything alone, bringing up the fact is that, like, right, Barry, when you first wanted to do this whole superhero thing, I told you were too young and not do it. And it's like, what'd you do? I went out to prove that I couldn't. It's exactly, and you saved so many lives. What about you, Iris? When Barry went into the Speed Force at the end of season 3, like, who took charge of Star Labs and kept everyone going and took charge? You did. So the fact of the matter is, there's just so much, there's a lot you can't just do on your own, but you can do so much. It takes a family to protect a family. And it's like, so right. And Barry and Iris realize, like, the entire time, all we've been doing is keeping the forces separate. Like, we're trying to protect them and everything, but rather than coming together as a family like we should, we kind of pulled each other apart. So it's like, and that was kind of Joe's point. So, but Barry decided, like, yeah, no more hiding. He goes to Dion. It's like, what we're going to do is we're going to fight together. And Alexa and Bashir felt that, that resonance. And then it's like, right, we're here, no running. And it's like, Dion being like, I'm sorry, I tried to kill you. And it's like, help us deal with this. We might forgive you. So them all standing there together as a family is actually pretty dope. And then they show up and confront Nora. Then you have Nora teleporting them to, like, the Speed Force, which looks very different because it's being, like, I think it's just because of the state that Nora's in. And it's actually pretty badass, like, the God modes they go into, because obviously you have Bashir putting his mask back on, Alexa turning into Fuerza, but also, like, Dion, like, is that the first time he did that, whereas, like, his head turned into, like, that energy, and so did his hands, like, his skin, like, his flesh kind of disappeared, he was almost kind of, like, just energy. I was like, holy crap. And it's literally, like, a 4-way battle between, it's like 3 gods and a superhero. It's so crazy to think that was all happening inside of the Speed Force and everything. But luckily, them all working together, like, and that, they kind of got taken down in certain parts, like Fuerza and psych. But in that moment, like Dion and Barry working together, striking her and knocking them out of the Speed Force. But obviously, this isn't over yet. So obviously, all of this is creating a storm that's basically touching down, like it's all gathering together. And it's like, if that finishes doing what it's doing, it's basically going to wipe everything out of existence, because it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be kind of like a rubber band effect. It's supposed to be kind of like the inverse of, or the reverse of the forces being born. This is kind of like everything being unmade. So Barry's running to try and deal with that, but at the same time, like, it's like, well, Dad's not here to protect you, so I'm gonna, kill all you guys, essentially. But them working together, I wasn't quite sure, because at first I was like, oh, I guess it was just Dion on his own, because part of me was wondering whether it was psych or not, but I think it's more so like maybe it could have been them working together, but it seemed like it was mostly Dion. Basically, he has, being the Still Force and everything, he was able to kind of teleport her to a time where she was all alone, and she breaks down, because it's her greatest fear. So that's why I felt like it might have been a combination, but like it might have been just like Freya's like giving him a heads up of like what to do, and then Dion's power putting her where they need her to. So in that moment, like, she's terrified because she's all alone. Like, she talked about not wanting to live in that darkness, because that's what she was so scared of, that they would do that. They would leave her alone. Like, and at this point, it's like, right, I'm the only force, and I'm going to be alone, because eventually all of humanity will eventually die, I think, and she'll be all alone. And again, that's what it's supposed to represent, because she's a force of nature. So, like, eventually she'd keep going and nothing else will. So it's just like being all alone all over again. But it's like, no, that's just one possible timeline. Not unless it's supposed to represent of like how this could have gone sideways and everything and everyone disappeared, and she would be all alone in this world and have no one, despite wanting to be around people. Like, she wants Barry, and obviously she has her complicated feelings about Iris currently. But it's like Alexa reaches out to her. It's like, you don't have to be alone. That's just one possible future. Another is being with us as an actual family. And in that moment, we're able to reach out to her, giving her what she needs, and not just her, kind of what all of them needed. And so in that moment, Barry's not fast enough, but all of the forces working together were able to channel their energy through Barry, and he's able to kind of dissipate everything, And Nora's able to come back, And she's like, you saved me, Barry. Like, you helped kind of, I'm sorry for everything. So now we see them back in the Speed Force, well, that point in time, and this is kind of going to be their new home, but they're here together. And it is this beautiful thing where it's like, like they're going to stay here together and kind of expand the place. Because it kind of makes me think of what Barry was saying, like, right, of like, all the heroes that would get birthed from them, like the beauty of like the Speed Forces, the other forces, because of how many heroes, how much light they will end up ultimately spreading, And so obviously Nora apologizing to Iris, saying like she's so sorry, but obviously Alexa being like, I never, she's kind of been on her own. She never really had anyone, so kind of giving this a try. Bashir being like, yeah, he's never really had a real family, so he's willing to give it a try. And so is Dion, and I think that's kind of dope. And it's like, no one has to be alone. And it's like, I mean, come on, we're God, so we get to like shape something and make it our own, and eventually, once again, like spread out like what this can be, like who they, what heroes they will eventually give birth to, is what Barry had, kind of saw. So that's just kind of badass to know, like, oh yeah, like they're these forces of nature are living on the set. It seems like this could be a sitcom on its own. When four forces of nature get together, things go wild. It seemed like, like your stereotypical, like, kind of 80s or 90s sitcom type of thing. Like, it just seems like that. Like, that's kind of crazy to think about. But, at the end of the day, there's also the situation with, well, for one, you had Cisco and Camilla, and it's just the whole thing of like, no, I love you. And it's like, oh, no, I love you. It's like, oh, and that little back and forth being so cute. And she's whispering, he's like, oh, really? And then she keeps talking. He's like, oh, Camilla, like, she must have been saying something real dirty. And then I love, like, Chester and Allegra sitting there like, what are we supposed to... And they look at each other, they're kind of awkward about it, and they just kind of look away. It's like, please tell me, like, it's something like another apocalypse or something happened. It's like, nah. And Cisco's looking at his phone, and it's like, oh, like, and he puts it away. Camilla knows what it's about. So it seems like he's getting a job offer at Argus, which once again, because of our previous experience, is somewhat because of the Arrow, because obviously Argus, clandestine, government organization, does some stuff. I mean, it's particular under Amanda Waller, but obviously like under Lila to a certain extent too, like still kind of do some jobs that you're not too much of a fan of. But also, once again, I will always resent them a little bit just because the other timeline, Zari's future, where Argus was like rounding up metas, like it's too close to where things currently stand because of Kristen and everything, so it makes you kind of go, we could definitely see that being enough. I mean, considering like she's anti-meta and she was working with Argus to make the whole cure thing happen and first, so on and so forth, right? So I don't know, we'll see. But I guess it's like for Cisco, maybe this is a new opportunity. It's like what could be awaiting him, what good he could do at Argus. I don't know. Maybe he could be the guiding force to shape Argus and push it in a certain direction that's the betterment for everybody. Maybe, maybe not. So we'll wait and see on that. But also, once again, the Chester and Allegra thing, I'm like, whoa, is that a thing? Or is it just kind of like, oh, they're making out and like, have they thought about it? Or is it supposed to be a thing of like, oh, like, well, we're both single, and it's like, I mean, I guess they've never had an opportunity to really think about their respective dating lives, and I think at that moment, just kind of like, but I'm like, oh, is that potentially going to be a thing? I don't know. We'll have to, wait and see. Joe and Cecile, Joe being beside Cecile's side, being like, she's like, what were you doing for him? It's like, being exactly where I'm needed, where the people I need, who need me to be. So, once again, the big thing of like, well, what is Joe going to do now? Like, I was thinking like maybe like private investigator, kind of like John. Like I said, I feel like because of everything going on in Supergirl, John's kind of left that behind to a certain extent. Last time we really saw him doing the PI thing, maybe he did in season 5, I don't remember. Definitely season 4 is, like, at the end of season 3, throughout season 4 is, like, where he really did the whole PI thing. So I'm wondering, like, is Joe going to go down that route? I mean, it'd be very befitting, like, with his police experience and stuff like that. Obviously, like, Ralph went down that PI route. I mean, Ralph's office is still there, so, like, I could definitely see Joe kind of taking that, making it his own while Ralph's away, maybe. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of something interesting to think about. That's kind of a route I was kind of thinking of, so there's that. Then there's the other element of, first and foremost, like, obviously the prison break. Mark breaks out, but so does Frost. Honestly, I love that whole back and forth. And he's like, yeah, sorry about the whole, potential trying to kill you. And she said, just shut up, just stop talking about it. It's like, he's like, oh, you're kind of, he's like, oh, like, want to go for a drink? She's like, no, I'm not going to go out for you with dinner and stuff like that. He's like, whoa, I was just talking about, oh, you're talking about dinner the whole night? Like, she's like, I'm not going to go out with you. He's like, whoa, like, you mean like dinner, the whole 9 yards? And she was almost like, shut up. And it's like, she's so flustered and it's cute because like we've never really seen her like that. I mean, it was immediate attraction between her and Mark when they first met before. It's like, oh, revealed that you're the one that was killing people and kind of framing me to a certain extent. So it's like, yeah. But at the same time, it's like, oh, he's like, why are you like not keep staring at my abs and everything? And so there's like definitely, it's almost like that Mr. or Mrs. Smith thing of like, right, like that sexy, like, hate fighting, but, like, we're in love type of thing. Which, how Mr. and Mrs. Smith situation ends up in the movie, which, if I don't know if you didn't know, they're actually rebooting that as an Amazon TV show. Donald Glover and Phoebe Waller-Bridge are behind it. So I made a video talking about it a while back. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, I just think it's so dope that it's like, and later on she goes to, she checks in on Caitlin and tells her, like, hey, like, I actually got probation because, hey, I might have escaped, but I also made sure to bring back a couple, like, escaped people. So I thought that was pretty dope. So it's like, yeah. And she's also like, I got a crush. He's a bartender. It's like, that's definitely going to be complicated. I guess as one former criminal, not as a reformed criminal, maybe it's just kind of like, oh, maybe just like the bad boy thing is very attractive. I don't know. Maybe it's like, oh, he could be a good guy too. Maybe like Frost can shift and change him like she changed, and like, yeah, I can put you back on the right path type of thing. I don't know, but it's like there's just immediate like clicking between them. So it's like, yeah, he did try to kill you and everything, but we're quickly overlooking that, aren't we? So that's fascinating. But what I really loved is the fact is, what was Caitlin reading? It was the book called Rawhide by Rebecca Silver. I was like, yo! If I'm not mistaken, considering the timeline and everything, like where we are timeline-wise, I would assume that's Mona's, like, not unless that's an older book, but I'm assuming that's something Mona wrote, considering like she's taken the Rebecca Silver pen name from because Mick gave it to her. So I'd like I said, if that's a more recent book, it might be an older book, but it's just like I just love that. I was like, that's so cool. Either way, it'd be interesting if it was one of Mick's book that you're reading, just considering Team Flash's connection to Mick, because hey, Mick was at this pseudo Barry and Iris wedding and everything, but also it'd just be neat to know, like, oh yeah, because like we haven't really touched base with Mona since she took over that, at the like beginning of season 5. You haven't really touched on that when she took over in DC on Legends of Tomorrow season 5. But regardless, I just thought that was kind of neat. So once again, the Frost situation, that's definitely going to be interesting, especially the dude that you're crushing is currently in prison. But it's like, I can wait. So Frost has kind of got her freedom. We'll see what kind of happens. Maybe we'll get some visits between her, like, her and it's like, hey, Mark, it's like, sorry I kind of locked you up again, but yeah, I do kind of have a thing for you. So maybe they start a relationship like that. It'd be interesting. I'm sure Caitlyn's not going to be too. Just like, whoa, you can't date him. He's a bad guy. He tried to kill you. It's like, come on. I kind of did some stuff back in my day, and look at where, it's all about redemption and everything, right? So I thought that was interesting. But then we also got the final thing in the episode too, where it's like Barry and Iris talking about a family, It's a conversation they haven't really talked about, I think, since the Nora thing. Because I think they had brought that up. It's like, right, how maybe we're not meant to have kids. We couldn't protect Nora. And that's when Joe was like, oh, that's BS, And that's why he kind of set them right. But it's like, I think that probably has been a deterrent. Like, losing your daughter like that probably makes you kind of, like, reluctant to kind of go down that path again. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Kind of thing to think about, but for them it's like, right, now that the forces are gone, it kind of makes them feel like, like something's missing. It kind of makes them start having that conversation about kids and stuff like that. And Iris kind of walks away, and it's like, he's like, oh, where are you going? And she's like, yeah, I'm kind of done waiting. And it's like, oh, I think Barry says, oh, I love the impulse or something like that. And you're like, shut up, Barry, shut up, you. Using that name, how dare you? Which is also very befitting. Which is definitely going to be interesting, because I'm curious how that's going to... Well, there has been... I'll go ahead and talk about it. If you don't want any spoilers, you can stop this right now. And it's because this could be some, like, future Flash stuff spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything, just stop the recording here, because I'm done with the review. But if you keep listening, I'll let you know. Give you, like, a 5-second window to kind of close this out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I got a Google alert popping up on my phone, since we're talking about Impulse, saying that Bart Allen, a.k.a. Impulse, has been cast in The Flash. It's Jordan Fisher. The thing I kind of best know him for is, like, Matt from the game Until Dawn. That's kind of like the first thing I ever saw him. But obviously he's been in, like, a multitude of things. Musician, actor, everything. But yeah, he's going to be Bart. And I'm like, oh, that's so dope. Which also makes me think, like, which I'm almost like, oh, is this almost going to be like a Flashpoint thing of like, right, things change because this is post-crisis. So instead of, they'll probably be surprised because like, oh, we thought we were getting Nora again, but now we're actually getting Bart. That'd be kind of interesting. I mean, it could still work out. Well, because of Crisis, Oliver kind of shifted things around. So not only did they, Lila and Diggle have, a son. They also had, a daughter. They had Sarah. So that was kind of something that was erased because of Flashpoint and everything. So obviously, because it's being post-crisis and everything, it's a different timeline, literally a different Earth now, because it's technically multiple Earths, combined into one. But because of that, that's probably where we're getting the Bart thing instead of Nora. But that doesn't mean that can't still happen later on. Maybe things are going to be a little different in that regard. So maybe Bart's going to be born first, and then eventually they'll potentially have Nora. Maybe coming to terms with that too, of like, oh, we don't have Nora, but we have Bart. Like, at least they got to know Nora, get to know who she grows up to be. This is going to be a complete surprise. Well, except for, because they do cast an older actor, it comes as no surprise. I mean, I guess that's how Impulse... I'm as someone who's not familiar with the comic books, I only know this because of Young Justice. The cartoon is the only reason why I was familiar with the character at all. So I'm assuming that that's his typical story, even in the comic books, that he comes into the story because it's like, hey, I'm from the future and I'm here to see that. I mean, very much like Nora's story to a certain extent. So maybe for different reasons, maybe this has something to, once again, an element we haven't touched on yet, because I think we've done with all like the forces thing for now. So I think we're going to move into like potentially touching on the Godspeed storyline that's supposed to be kind of covered this season. So I'm assuming Impulse has something to do with that. So that's definitely going to be interesting. So very much like, oh, coming back in time to save my dad from like what's coming, like why he disappeared, you know, that's kind of what's Nora's thing. And now like maybe Impulse's thing, it's like, right, we got to save the world from Godspeed because he's an anomaly and an issue, whatever that ends up being. So obviously, like I said, this is this aspect of the conversation ended up going longer than I thought it was. I was going to talk about the Impulse thing alone, but it ended up kind of going a little bit longer than I thought it would. So, but yeah, just kind of some interesting stuff kind of floating in the back of my head because of all of that. But nevertheless, there is no episode of The Flash next week. There will be one the week after next on June 8th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.